Welcome on into the First Round Fantasy Podcast, your home for second round advice. It's me, Gabriel Miramontes, by myself today. Where's everyone at? I don't understand. We started so strong, yet we've come down to so few. It is me today. Jacob cannot make it. He's here in spirit. You know, we have lives. I don't know where these guys find all this time to just talk about fantasy football all day. But by golly, if I could, I would. But I'm not there yet. But it's people like you that help us get there. So thanks for tuning in today. If you are listening, if you're watching us on YouTube, you get the Grand Ole Opry Tour. This is it. This is me. This is what you see. This is what you get. I got no background today. I'm just letting you in, man. I am just letting you in. I'm not wearing a hat today. I just got a haircut. Yeah, there's something up there. If you didn't think about it, there is. But just me today, here to give you some good old second round fantasy advice. And I hope and appreciate that you are along for this journey. Before we get started today, feel free to find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at First Round Fantasy. You can also find us here on YouTube at First Round Fantasy or anywhere you get your podcast, most notably Apple Podcast or Spotify Podcast. How do you get your podcasts? What do you use? I always say Spotify or Apple Premium, but I'm interested in what you guys are using these days. The youth, I've been using that word a lot. Quick topic to start the show, unfantasy related. My car was vandalized. That's a first for me. It was tagged with some very inappropriate language. Didn't make me feel too good. Didn't make me feel too good at all. But if you are out there and your car has been tagged before, maybe you're a young listener who doesn't have a car. You know, it happens to everyone at some point, I assume. And it was a sad day. Anyways, getting way off topic now. Let's talk trade deadline. Obviously, it's been a few days. The dust has settled since everything has kind of come to fruition. And a lot of heads were moving, a lot of fantasy implications. Most notably to me, and the one that I want to talk about first, is the Chicago Bears going out to get Chase Claypool. Why is this important for fantasy? For two reasons. I think it's important for Chase Claypool because if you were previously rostering him, which I doubt it because he's about like 40% rostered, so very seldom, very few in between, we're probably rostering this player. But with that being said, I like it for a number of reasons. One being, you're not dropping Chase Claypool anymore. I think there's a lot of upside there, even if there isn't. It's the chance that there could be upside. So for that reason and that reason alone, that question mark of what could be, I like it. Chase Claypool has always been a downfield threat. Justin Fields throws the ball downfield. We've seen success with that over the last 2 weeks, which is why I love a guy like, Justin Fields going forward, especially with his matchups coming up over the next few weeks. But the addition of Chase Claypool does another thing for me. It builds my confidence in a player like Justin Fields long term. Now, the rumors going into this season were all around and all over the place. A new regime in Chicago. What do they want? Well, they want someone who they want to draft. Everybody made the comments after the draft just this past offseason. Well, what are they doing to support Justin Fields? They're not doing anything to support Justin Fields. They added a 25-year-old rookie wide receiver in the 4th or 5th round. I don't remember because it wasn't worth mentioning at the time. It seemed like the new regime had set up Justin Fields to fail. This move tells me otherwise. It suggests a new narrative in a world where Justin Fields is the cornerstone. They are willing to build around him. And I feel quite confident in saying that, but not so quite confident in believing in it. So I'd love to get your thoughts on the Justin Fields scenario and saga. What about Chicago Bears fans? How are you guys feeling? What are your thoughts? Are you hearing things differently? You know, I'm not an in-tapped insider. These were just my impressions, my thoughts, my opinions after reading some things after the draft. just this past season or coming into this season. But you got to love Chase Claypool. I think he's a solid hold in redraft leagues with the potential of, what he could do, where he's essentially now the number one option. And what this could do for Darnell Mooney as well. Someone who a lot of people had high hopes for, didn't necessarily live up to those high expectations. He's been dropped as well. So I think if both of those guys are on your waiver wires, they're both worth speculative ads. Chase Claypool being one probably, but also Darnell Mooney maybe more of a certainty there because he has the rapport already with Justin Fields. But wow, what a way! You also got Chase Edmonds, running back formerly of the Miami Dolphins. Now he heads over to Denver, the Denver Broncos. Interesting move there. Obviously, the Broncos, they don't want to, ride out their season with 230-plus-year-old running backs. So they go and invest in Chase Edmonds. A really good acquisition in the offseason from what it appeared by the Miami Dolphins. And it just didn't turn out that way. They are steadfast in believing that Raheem Mostert can do something with that team when healthy. And 3+ weeks with 14 or more carries for Raheem Mostert. He seems to be the guy there, even with the acquisition of Jeff Wilson Jr., formerly of the San Francisco 49ers. So just a lot of movement there. But as far as the Denver Broncos backfield is concerned, I wasn't too excited about them, just in general once Javonte Williams went down. Now with Chase Edmonds at the helm, it's likely to see that he's going to get some passing down work. I know that Mike Boone also went onto the IR. So it's just not pretty. The situation is not pretty there. I'm not too excited about it. I don't think you should be excited about it for fantasy either. If there's anyone to own, it's Latavius Murray. He's been getting the goal line work. He's been getting the touchdowns. So in standard leagues, I think he's a guy. Chase Edmonds was likely dropped over the last couple of weeks with the emergence of Raheem Mostert. So if he's there, at best, he's a speculative ad. I'd much rather have Chase Claypool, see what he can do. But I'm just not feeling it too much. I want to go back to the Justin Fields topic for a moment because his matchups over the next few weeks are just pristine and quarterback fantasy production. But on one side of the ball, their matchup this week against Miami, they just went out and got Raquel Smith, linebacker from the Chicago Bears. And boy, oh boy, does that make a significant impact in week one with his presence in Miami with that matchup against Justin Fields? I don't think so. I think it's still fine. Oh, I'm sorry. Not Raquel Smith. It was Bradley Chubb. Now you got me questioning myself on national in front of two people listening right now. But if you listen to this later, you can kind of get where I'm heading out here. Yes, so sorry. Bradley Chubb, formerly of the Denver Broncos, is now a Miami Dolphin. I got to fact check myself when I'm doing shows by myself here. Get with it or get lost. It's just the way I have to do things sometimes. Okay? But I don't think it factors into it at all. I think Wilson is still a fine play. He's actually a fine waiver wire ad this week. I actually made a trade for Justin Fields just to kind of show you my confidence in him in a dynasty league in which I felt like I gave up quite a lot for him just because dynasty league QBs are so scarce to come by. I like his schedule, and now with the move to acquire Chase Claypool, I feel even more confident that he could be a long-term answer there in Chicago. But again, I want to get your thoughts, especially from Chicago fans. But right now, it doesn't look like we have any Chicago Bears fans. So I'll leave it at that for the time being. Any other notable players here that I can think of? Not off the top of my head. Waiver wire ads, I still think at the top of my list is Kyren Williams. They did not do anything. They being the Los Angeles Rams, they didn't move Cam Akers. Darrell Henderson did not get a lot of work last week. Instead, it was Austin Rivers. No, not the point guard for wherever he plays in the NBA. I think it was Ronnie Rivers. Doesn't matter. I don't think he's that relevant. But I do like the pickup. I do like that Kyren Williams is a rookie that they invested in, not a high draft pick, but I think he's a guy that once he comes off the IR, he makes a significant impact in that lineup just because there's no faith in Cam Akers. There's no faith in Henderson. Undrafted rookie Rivers, I don't think you're going to give the ball to him another 15, 20 times a game. I want to see. I want to see what Kyron Williams can do. I think he's technically still on the IR. He hasn't come off yet. So if you're adding him and your IR spots are freed up, then do it. I think it's a great time to do it. But you might likely already be too late for that as well. And again, we talked about some of those other guys already. So overall, for fantasy, I like the Chase Claypool ad. I like what it does for Justin Fields. I like what it does, the possibility of what it could do for a guy like Justin Fields, and the possibility of what it could do for Chase Claypool. Edmonds to Denver, not really a fan. Gut reaction says there's not going to be a lot there. And then who else do we have? Russell Wilson, or not Russell Wilson, Jeff Wilson Jr. to the Miami Dolphins. Not one I'm really tore up about. I still think they give a lot of work to Raheem Mostert. I read somewhere previously over the last couple of days, or not the last couple of days, this morning, that, obviously both of these players come from San Francisco, where Mike McDaniels, coach of the Miami Dolphins, was a coach, offensive coordinator for the last couple of years. And they're saying that when these two guys have played together, Jeff Wilson has ran more passing routes. And it's like, okay, well, is he catching balls? And yeah, he's catching a few, but Raheem Mostert has been fantasy relevant, and he hasn't been getting a lot of passing down work anyways. It just seems like they're not doing that in Miami. That's not their style. They'd rather just give him the ball 15 or 16 times, and you hope he falls in the end zone. He's efficient like he was last week. He just didn't find the end zone. So those are kind of the problems you run into when you find running backs that aren't getting passing down work. They're just getting the bulk of the carries. You're excited about them in standard leagues because they might fall in the end zone, but in PPR leagues, you're a little bit more worried about them. Anyways, I'm rambling. You've heard it all before. That was just my take, my instant takes. Again, is it first round advice? No, it's second round advice, and I appreciate you for listening to it. Just casual fantasy football advice for your needs, for your teams. Give me your questions if you have any. Drop them in the chat. I'll be sure to get to them as soon as I can, which I appreciate. Over the last couple of weeks, we've just had waves and waves of last-minute start-sit questions. And that, hey, it helps us out so much. And hopefully we will be able to help you out. I will say this. One of my poll questions on Twitter last week was Malik Willis against Houston or Davis Mills against Houston. It was a dynasty spot I was dealing with. Neither of them panned out, but I'll be the first one to admit, I made a horrible trade in acquiring Malik Willis, panicking. I didn't like my QBs. I wasn't confident in the QBs that I had. Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, to name a few, and then Davis Mills, of course. And I just wasn't happy with it. So I gave up Kadarius Toney, Zach Wilson, and James Cook, all for Malik Willis, on the hope that he was going to come out and set the world on fire. Well, I made that trade. I found out he was starting and instantly found out that they weren't going to plan on using him at all. And it's exactly what they didn't do. They didn't use him at all. They gave Henry 30-something touches. I don't know, maybe 20. They gave him a lot of touches. He had a monster day, and it just made me look silly. And I got to mute this because my dog's barking. Or maybe I'll come over here because, you can see him today. You want to come over here, Hope? You want to join the show? He's giving me a very weird look. So he's not going to be joining us today. But maybe he comes by a little bit later. But yeah, Malik Willis, man. It was a gut decision. I overpaid an extreme amount for him, and for that I am hurt, and I don't feel good about myself at all. I'm not wasting any more time. I want to get into some dark horses right now. Even if it's a short show today without my partner in crime, it's going to be a good show because we always get you our dark horses and our Fool's Gold players of the week. So let's get into dark horses. And before we do, let's recap last week. I had DJ Moore. He was a hit. He had a great solid game in a shootout that was the Panthers and Atlanta Falcons. Good for him. Good to see him string two games together. And again, it's called the only option effect. And right now, he's the only option over there in Carolina. So look for him to continue to get touches. I also liked what PJ Walker was doing. Deep leagues, I think he's a fine stream this week. He really pulled it together. That team looks good. CMC was the problem all along. Who knew, right? Who knew? Anyways, he was a hit. Jacob went with Drake London. And again, I kind of alluded to it on the podcast when he had talked about it. If you're not getting a lot of passing volume, it's not going to replicate well. He only had 5 targets, didn't do a lot with them, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. This week, however, it's my chance to keep the streak going, and it's a bye-pocalypse. 6 teams are on bye. So with that being said, let's get into my dark horse of the week, and that is A.J. Dillon, running back for the Green Bay Packers. Why do I like him this week? Well, first and foremost, because he's probably one of the only options out there. As I mentioned, 6 teams on bye this week. I don't have to say the teams, but I can say the type of players that you're going to be missing this week. Nick Chubb, ever heard of him? Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, Najee Harris, not the greatest. We talked about the Broncos backfield and CMC. Those are valuable running backs. Most of them are top-notch, top 5 fantasy options right now. And you don't have them this week. That means you have to pivot. I think A.J. Dillon is a fine player to insert into your flex lineup, maybe even your running back 2 spot this week. And for those, I like them. I don't know what else to say. They play Detroit, the number 1 team to give up, I should say, opposing rushing fantasy production. They just give up big play after big play, not to mention a league-leading 13 rushing touchdowns allowed so far this season. It's just the way that it's going for them right now, and it's the way that teams come in and they play them. Unless you're Geno Smith in whatever week that was. That game was absolutely crazy. Case in point, running backs have good days against the Detroit Lions. Now, A.J. Dillon is a running back 2 on his own team. He's been ceding a lot of touches to Aaron Jones over the last couple of weeks, but I don't think that matters this week. I think with the scarcity at the position, you have to play the players you're willing to play. I'm starting A.J. Dillon this week. I don't even think I'm missing any of the big 6. I'm just starting him because I believe that there's an opportunity for him to fall in the end zone, and that's really the big kicker here. 13 touchdowns the Detroit Tigers have given up. The Detroit Lions have given up, and A.J. Dillon has to be one of them. Now, him and Aaron Jones, they don't have a lot of rushing touchdowns on the year. They have 2 combined, and that's right. They're split 1-1. I don't know. I just like the upside of getting that 30-yard run, getting that goal line touchdown. And to be honest, is he used around the goal line as much as he should be? No. Aaron Jones sees a lot of work, but A.J. Dillon has also seen a piece. So there is a chance there for him to see fantasy success. And I believe it this week. He saw 10-plus carries last week. He's done that 6 times this year. And again, when you're going up against the Detroit Lions, you could probably beat them through the air, but they are very much beatable on the ground. Now you say, well, they have Aaron Rodgers. You can beat them through the air that way. Well, this might be a get-right game for Aaron Rodgers, but I don't want to believe in it as much as I want to believe in the running game. Aaron Rodgers just hasn't been getting it done. They don't have a lot of wide receiver options right now. Alan Lazard, he may or may not play this week. Christian Watson, promising rookie. He's been in and out of the lineup. He's in concussion protocol currently right now. Romeo Doubs came back to life last week. I don't know. He's a dart throw at best. You don't know what to think when you think about the Green Bay Packers wide receiving core. And for that, it scares me. What doesn't scare me is the fact that I think this team is going to come out and they're going to run the ball 30 times. Now, does that mean A.J. Dillon gets 8 of those carries? Does that mean they split the carries 15-15? Or does that mean, we're looking at a 20-10 split, right? I think I like it any way it shapes out. You're desperate at running back. You're starting A.J. Dillon this week. I like him more than guys like Michael Carter this week against Buffalo. I like him better if you're thinking about a flex option. I like him better than Allen Robinson at Tampa Bay. Um, I like him better than Tyler Algier against the Chargers. I'm just looking at matchups here. Mecole Hardman against Tennessee. I have in my notes here DM, and I don't, I don't know who it is. They play Miami. Who plays Miami this week? Oh man, this is aging me. But whoever DM is, I like him more, or I like him less than I like AJ Dillon this week. I think he's a confident play, and again, confidence in the fact that is there a little shakiness to that? Sure, because I'm really dependent on the touchdowns. I think, are there 3 rushing touchdowns in this game? Sure. Does he get one of them? Sure. He's also averaging a pretty good yards per carry. So with that being said, I think he can break off a good run. I think he could find the end zone. I think he could turn his 10 carries into what? I don't know, 45 yards. That's 4.5 yards a carry. I'm doing easy math there. One to sound smart. And he falls in the end zone, right? That's 10 plus fantasy points. That's not enough for what we usually go with. So is there a world where I see, 11 carries, 12 carries for 65 yards and a touchdown, puts him right around 13 fantasy points? Maybe he catches a ball, which is very unlikely. But yes, I think there is a world where that can happen. If you're beating the Detroit Lions, you're doing it on the ground game. And when you're missing these amount of running backs, you got to start guys like A.J. Dillon, who was a major disappointment so far this year. But I'm not saying he's going to light the world on fire, but he's definitely going to be serviceable this week. So for those reasons, that is my dark horse this week, A.J. Dillon, running back for the Green Bay Packers. Let's move on. I don't know why I'm so animated. Let's move on to the Indianapolis. Oh, my goodness. Let's move on to Fool's Gold, guys. Fool's Gold Players of the Week. Last week, I went with David Montgomery. That was a hit. The emergence of Khalil Herbert is real. You should be worried about it as a David Montgomery owner. I'm starting Khalil Herbert this week over David Montgomery again. So it was a hit for me, and I'm proud of it. I'm not proud of it. I don't want the guy to be bad, but, it's just the way it is. Let's see. Jacob Bartley went with Tyler Boyd. Didn't see the success you wanted to see there. I'm being blinded currently by the light through my shades. Boy, oh boy, I'm having a good time here. Let's get into this week, week 9. Let's get into my Fool's Gold Player of the Week. And if you were listening, you would have said that I mentioned Indianapolis. So at least we've narrowed it down. And no, it's not Jonathan Taylor. Although keep an eye out, he has an injury designation this week, and he did not practice today, which is kind of common on Wednesdays for most players. But anyways, no, it's not Jonathan Taylor. My Fool's Gold player for Week 9 is Indianapolis Colts wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. Last week they benched Matt Ryan. Some people were happy to see it. Their record supposedly, was bad enough to just try it out. I don't really know. But yeah, you lose a lot of fumbles, you throw a lot of interceptions, you're going to get benched. And that's what happened to Matt Ryan. Sam Ehlinger came in his place, and he did fairly well. And I will say this, Michael Pittman's day could have looked a lot better last week. He missed pretty much a game-winning 30 or 40-yard pass right through his hands, and that could have given him probably about a 10-point fantasy day, but instead he settled right around that 7-point range, and it's just kind of sad what's going on, because Sam Ehlinger, maybe it's his first game out. They want to temper his expectations. They want to keep him grounded. They want to make him feel comfortable. Limited his passing attempts. I think he scurried about 6 or 7 times. But the targets that Michael Pittman did get, because I know you're probably wondering, well, Michael Pittman, he saw 9 targets, 7 catches for 53 yards. And sure, that's a great PPR day. It's not. It's what? I think like I said, he had like 7 or 8 points. But what happens here is that if you look at Sam Ehlinger's stats from that day, I don't think he threw a bar. His average depth of target was like 6 yards, meaning everything that Michael Pittman was getting was close to the line of scrimmage. Was he under pressure? Were they just trying to play it safe? Sure, it could be a combination of both of those reasons. I don't think it gets better this week. Okay, I don't like that Sam Ellinger was doing what he was doing. It didn't bode well for guys. It didn't even bode well for the running backs. I mean, we could just talk about the Indianapolis offense as a whole. I mean, you're looking at a guy like Jonathan Taylor last week who caught 7 balls. Deion Jackson caught 10 balls earlier this year because Matt Ryan was just a dump off king. We didn't see that last week. What we saw was Sam Ellinger rushing out of the pocket. And that limits the upside of the Indianapolis Colts running backs. But we're talking about Michael Pittman Jr. specifically here. I mentioned a few things already. This week they play the Patriots. And if you know anything about the Patriots, whose defense hasn't necessarily been the greatest so far this year. But if there's one thing that, Bill Belichick knows how to do, it's how to shut down rookie running backs. And, Sam Ellinger isn't a rookie, right? I get that. I understand that. But he certainly doesn't have a lot of experience. And I think Bill Belichick is going to exploit that this week. There's not a lot to say here. I just don't feel confident in the matchup. I like Jacoby Myers, other side of the ball. I like him more this week. I like Christian Kirk, who's had a few down weeks. I like him against Las Vegas. Juju versus Tennessee. I like Raheem Mostert if you're dealing with that flex position. I like Duvernay, wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. They've already ruled out Rashad Bateman. There's questionable tags there on guys like Mark Andrews. So I like Duvernay. He did fall in the end zone last week. I didn't say fall. He did have a rushing touchdown. I heard it. It feels bad to say it. It feels gross. I like Romeo Doubs better than Michael Pittman this week. And I'm not a big fan of Romeo Doubs. I just don't think it's in the cards. Now, are we going to be having the same conversation, 3 or 4 weeks from now? Sure, maybe, possibly. But I'd like to think things change as Sam Ellinger kind of progresses and develops a little bit more throughout the rest of the season, the second half or so, that he kind of finds himself. They really want to see what they have in him. They start letting him sling it. Sure, that's great. I'd be happy to put Michael Pittman back in my lineup. And that's not to say that you're not going to be putting Michael Pittman in your lineup. Maybe you don't have any of these guys that I just mentioned. That's the other thing about Fool's Gold players. You need to temper your expectations. It's not a move you want to make. It's probably not a move you're going to make by benching Michael Pittman. I'm just saying that there are options out there that I like more than him this week. Feel free to drop your start sit questions in the chat below, and I'll be happy to answer them as they come. But there you have it. Michael Pittman, wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts, my Fool's Gold player for week 9 of the fantasy football season. Let's see. We got some Sunday night matchups this week. The Tennessee Titans to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. I'm not going to spend too much time. We hardly ever get to this on the show because during our normal time, we have a lot more traffic, a lot more airflow, a lot more comments. I know we're doing it at an odd and unusual time today. But, you're not starting Malik Willis if he starts. If Tannehill's back and healthy, there's a world where you start him, but I don't feel very comfortable starting him. And again, this is Sunday Night Football. Derrick Henry's a must start. Wide receivers, man. Robert Woods. That's tough. Sunday night, you're waiting all week to play those guys like Robert Woods. Probably not feeling it this week. The Chiefs defense is exposable, but I don't know. I just don't feel very confident in any options outside of Derrick Henry on that side of the ball. As far as the Chiefs, light them up. You're lighting up Juju. All the regulars. The real questions here are guys like MVS, Mecole Hardman, and Kadarius Toney, which was another big trade that I didn't mention because I figured we'd talk about it here. What are you going to do? I literally think it's going to be a roll of the dice. You probably will be wrong because you have a 1 out of 3 chance. Those aren't great odds. Mecole Hardman, before the acquisition of Kadarius Toney, had saw 3 straight games where he's received end zone opportunities. I think he scored on all 3 of those opportunities as well. So you were excited to see that. But Kadarius Toney just kind of muddles it for everybody. I think Juju is still quite a safe play this week. He was coming off 200-yard receiving performances before the bye. I think he can still continue that even after the bye, even with the acquisition of Kadarius Toney. I think he's a fine wide receiver 3. But as far as MVS, Kadarius, and Mecole Hardman, I'd say right now, if I had to put them in order, it'd be Mecole Hardman, then you have Kadarius, and then you have MVS. Like I said, I like the goal line work. I like the usage that they're giving Mecole Hardman around the goal line. So, you got to feel a little confident about him there. Kadarius Toney, this might be his get warm game. He's obviously hasn't played since week 2 of the NFL season. So I don't expect him to come out and have like an 80% snap share, maybe somewhere around like 30%, get a few plays in, maybe give him a few designed runs or something like that. But something to kind of just get him back into momentum. But nothing that I think is going to be fantasy relevant, at least this week. Let's look at the Monday night game. The Baltimore Ravens travel to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Andy Dalton, who would have thunk it, right? He's a fine streaming option this week. I like him over guys like Derek Carr, which is sad. It's just sad. It's just sad. Don't know what else to say. Kamara, you're starting. Wide receivers, Chris Olave, you're starting. Tight ends, Juwan Johnson. You want to take a shot on a touchdown or two? Sure, you could start him. Looking at the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews doesn't go. Isaiah Likely, I think, is a fine play. He demonstrated that with his 70 for 7 for 69 or 79 and a touchdown the other day. So he is certainly a good fill-in if Mark Andrews does not play. At the running back position, Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake seems to be the guy there. J.K. Dobbins still dealing with injury. Gus Edwards might not play. He hasn't been practicing this week. Kenyon Drake, man. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? He's a fine play this week. I like him over a number of guys. If you were to ask me A.J. Dillon or Kenyon Drake this week, woo, that'd be tough. That'd be tough. I'd probably go with the guy who's probably going to see more carries, which is Kenyon Drake in that scenario. But yeah, I mean, not a lot going on this week in fantasy. It's lonely up here, guys. It's lonely up here when you don't have your partner in crime. I hope to get Jacob Bartley back next week. You can always find us on your on your YouTube page. We're here on YouTube. We are generally, because I can't say always now since I'm talking to you today here at 4:30 p.m. But you can always find us again, generally find us Wednesday nights at 7:30 Pacific Standard Time. You can also find us Sunday mornings. We took last Sunday off because of the holidays. That's right. It was on a Monday, but we were really excited. So we wanted to take an extra day off to prepare for all the Halloween sweet treats, I guess. But you can also find us Sundays as well, where we do our Sunday morning tailgate, take any last minute start sit to questions. You can find us on Twitter at First Round Fantasy, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also find us here on YouTube or anywhere else you get your podcast, most notably Apple Podcast and Spotify Podcast. Hot takes, fellas. We love to end the show with them, and I got one for you today. Are you ready? Sure. I guess you are. Hot take for this week. There's a new number 1 overall QB performance coming this week. And I'm talking number 1 overall. I said it at the top. There may be a little bias here, recency bias, because I just acquired him. That's right. You've heard it. Run out to the waiver wires if he's there. Justin Fields sets the world on fire in week 9, finishing with a number 1 overall QB finish. You heard it here first, or maybe second. I don't know. But book it down. That's what's happening. I appreciate you so much. We'll talk to you later. Peace.